My primary reason for joining the military way back then in 1948, was for a job. And jobs back in that time in that part of the country were scarce and not very lucrative, so I actually joined the Army with the intent of making it a career. And later I changed my mind about making the Army a career and got out of the Army and enlisted in the Air Guard, which I made a career out of the Air National Guard. Well, I was born and raised on a cotton farm down in the southeast part of Missouri. And I was chopped and picked cotton from the time I was strong enough to lift the hoe and pull a cotton sack. And at my first opportunity, I enlisted in the regular Army with my mother's consent. And my contention was the Army life would probably be better than life on the cotton field. I met my wife when I was stationed at Fort Riley. She's originally Tony Swaim, and she lives in Manhattan. And that's when I met her. And then later, after I completed my Army service, well, I returned back to Kansas, and we got married in 1952. And we have 4 sons and 3 grandchildren. And 3 of my sons have served or are still serving in the Air Guard. And my youngest grandson just enlisted in the 190th back in August, so he's continuing the tradition of family service in the Air Guard. I've been a big supporter of that. Yeah, I really am. I always have encouraged my family to be military members. Well, yeah, see, my oldest son, Alan, has served in a number of Air Guard units. He just recently retired as a colonel from the New Jersey Guard. And my second son, of course, is Todd. And then my third son is the only member of the clan that did not join the military. We always say he was not adaptable to military service. And then my fourth son has served both in the 184th and the 190th, and he completed 20 years Guard service, and he's now running his private landscaping firm. And then I have an older grandson and a granddaughter and a young grandson, and my youngest grandson, who's a senior in high school. He just enlisted back in August in the 190th, and he'll be going to basic training as soon as he finishes his senior year in high school. Well, during I enlisted in the Army and finished my basic training at Fort Ord, California, and then was transferred to Fort Riley and assigned to Camp Funston. And my most significant assignment while I was at Camp Funston was, at age 19, I was promoted to Sergeant First Class and assigned as a platoon sergeant. And when I enlisted in Wichita in 1953, I enlisted as an enlisted member, and I rose through the grades to the highest enlisted grade of Chief Master Sergeant E9. And I consider my most significant assignments there is when I performed duties as a first sergeant and as the sergeant major. And then I received a direct appointment as first lieutenant after 10 years service in the unit as an enlisted member. I received a direct appointment as first lieutenant in 1962. Well, upon my commission in 1962 in Wichita, I served another 10 years in the unit as a commissioned officer. And my most significant assignment there was as the chief of personnel. And I played a major role in the mobilization of the unit following the Pueblo incident, their deployment and their reconstitution following their return from Korea in 1969. Then in 1973, I entered on a tour of active duty in the National Guard Bureau and served up there in the Pentagon from 1973 to 1977, at which time I returned to the state of Kansas and assigned here locally as the Combat Support Squadron Commander of the 190th. I was in 184th at Wichita, and then I served in the 190th here at Forbes. And then following that assignment, in 1978, I was transferred to the state headquarters as a senior member of the Air Guard, senior Air Guard staff member. Well, and my most significant accomplishment, I think, when I first signed to the state level, was the privilege to serve as a senior Air Guard representative on the Hall of Fame committee, which was chaired by General Ed DeGraw. And I'm very happy to have been a part of establishing our National Guard Hall of Fame. And then I also was privileged to serve as a senior Air Guard representative on the board that established our National Guard distinctive license tags. Well, when I returned to the National Guard Bureau in 1980 as the chief of the Air National Guard Manpower Personnel and Recruiting Program, the Air National Guard at that time was composed primarily as an all-male Caucasian force. As the chief of recruiting, and with the support of the chief of the National Guard Bureau and the director of Air Guard, we formed a special task force for the sole purpose of recruiting more minorities and women into the Air National Guard. And within a 2-year period, we raised the percent of manning in the Air National Guard from 3% minorities and women to 15% minorities and women. And I'm very proud to have been a part of that significant accomplishment. My most memorable job that I remember was the time I served as a platoon sergeant. Probably my most memorable moment as a highlight of my career was when I was presented with the Order of the Sword by the enlisted force in Wichita in 1989 prior to my retirement. This is a very coveted award that's only presented by enlisted people to general officers, and it's usually reserved for those general officers who've made a significant contribution for the betterment of the enlisted force. So this is a very coveted award, and this encased sword occupies a prominent place in my home. I think this is a culmination of my 42 years of military service. You know, this is a very prestigious honor, and I am highly honored by being inducted into the National Guard Hall of Fame. Yeah, it's never in your wildest dreams that you're going to become a general officer. Those are just things that it takes the right time, the right opportunity, and it takes somebody to provide you that opportunity for that to happen. That is not something that you can plan for. It's something you can hope for, but you can't plan for.